Well, does anyone want to suggest any topics for today? Piper, do you have any special requests for today? Is there anything in particular you'd like to have elaborated upon? Something you've come across in your exploration?
Not currently. But if something comes up, I'll be sure to let you know.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. Anyone else want to suggest anything?
I'd like to suggest, but I don't know if I should.
Please do.
Okay. I was thinking the process of surrender, maybe how we can do sharanagati. I don't know. That's just one topic.
The process of surrender.
Mm.
Okay. Do you want to expand upon that? What your thought process is surrounding that?
I was initially thinking about it because devotees typically say, surrender to Krishna, surrender to Krishna. So I was thinking, how do we surrender? And one thing that comes to mind is, yes, following the instructions Krishna gives us. That's one, our spiritual master gives us. That's one way to surrender. But the bhakti process is more than just simply following the rules. The purpose is to develop that relationship with Krishna. So, I mean, you can say, chant your rounds, follow regulative principles. Maybe then when you're advancing in your surrender, include deity worship or go out on Harinam, do book distribution. I don't know. So it's like, what does surrender mean? And is there like different levels and tiers of surrender? Like, let's say, we don't live in a vernational system in the sense, like, we don't have that community aspect of our national. So that to really go from, brahmacharya grahastha, we can do brahmacharya grahastha and then vanaprastha and sannyas. So like, I don't know what I'm saying. Maybe it's too much. Like, I don't know what. I was just thinking about that for a while, but I thought I'll ask.
Well, you mentioned there, what you mentioned, that Krishna consciousness is not just about, right and wrong, but we're developing a relationship with Krishna, but these are not necessarily two separate things. We can think of it this way, that in a relationship, you naturally want to please the other party, right? We live in a world that is pervaded so much by selfishness. But if we think about what love really means, it means that you want to give yourself to the other person. We may sometimes, use that word a little loosely, right? And we may sometimes think of, especially, in an immature mindset, we think of love as something that pertains to things that please us, right? And you see that with children, in a kind of more exaggerated way, that the people who give them candy, the people who give them toys, those are the ones that they like, But when we have a more mature, more developed conception of love, then we realize love is what moves us to want to please another. So as Sridhar Maharaj has expressed it, love means sacrifice. Love means that you care for that person so much that in your attempts to make them happy, you will forget your own self. Actually, you're so moved to please them that you'll forget your own needs. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj uses this expression, die to live. That's what that means, that we are forgetting our own self and our attempts to please the Lord. And Bhakti, this is actually Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he's actually indicated that this phrase that he uses, die to live, it's inspired by one line of Bhakti Vinod Thakur, interestingly enough, in his songbook, Sharanagati, Surrender. There's one line in one of his songs there, what is it? Tomar Ichai Mor, Icha Mishaila, Bhakti Vinod Aj, Apane Bulila, saying that today, he says, my desire, he's speaking, addressing the Lord, and he says, my desires have now merged with your desires. Today, I, Bhakti Vinod, have forgotten myself. I've forgotten myself, and now your want is synonymous with my want, all of my lower egoic, self-centered desires, they've been forgotten in my pursuit of your happiness. So that, that is what surrender is. That, it is very much connected with the spirit of love, or we want it to be, that's the idea, that, we are, and, we want that spirit to pervade our observance of, the various guidelines also, it's the spirit in which we follow different regulations and guidelines that, that makes all the difference, that, there's a rule, right? And we can like follow that with a feeling of obligation or resentment, feeling like, oh, this is a rule that's been arbitrarily imposed upon me to make my life more difficult, make my life more austere or whatever, but if we enter into the spirit of it, we'll see how this is actually there to help me. This is coming to me in a spirit of love, and I want to follow it in a spirit of love, so like, for example, just like kind of like for a simple example, observance of Akadashi, right? For those who aren't familiar, Akadashi, it's a day when we abstain from eating grains and richer foods. We try to take follow a more simple diet and follow a more simple lifestyle, so we can follow Akadashi, with, like it's a great trouble in our life, or, oh, darn it, it's Akadashi, like how it's so annoying, we can follow in that kind of begrudging spirit. Or we can think, oh, this is so wonderful. I have this opportunity to give more energy to Krishna, to please Krishna and to forget about myself. It is an opportunity. Akadashi, it's also known as Hari Vasar, means the Lord's own day. It is a day that is very dear to the Lord. And on this day, if I try to remember Krishna more and think less about myself, that will gather more interest. It has more value. It has more, it counts for more. Whatever I can give for my spiritual development, for my service life of dedication on this day, it counts for more. So it's an opportunity for me, simple living, high thinking, it's an opportunity to dive into that wonderful spirit, and how merciful the Lord is that he's given a day like this, so I can remember him more. Our Guru Dev, Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj, he spoke about how when he joined our temple in Bengal. Later the temple became more affluent, but in the beginning, in the early years, it was very poor, very, and they would take very simple prasad, very simple food, and live, the very, very simple standard of life. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj, our grandfather guru, he was also very strict, and he didn't allow, even our Gurudev, once somebody gave him a watch, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj considered that a luxury, to wear a watch, and he was very, very strict because he was so absorbed in the higher plane, and he wanted to keep any use of the resources of this world to an absolute minimum. And so he was very strict, and even our Gurudev, he in the beginning, when he joined, he liked to exercise, he joined as a teenager, right? He's 17 years old, and so when in the beginning he was following some exercise program, but Srila Sridhar Maharaj was so strict, he didn't allow that. and he told our Gurudev, if you need to exercise, you can do some gardening, while you're gardening, you can stretch your muscles, but you cannot separately do anything for yourself. When you're gardening, you're doing service for the deities and the devotees, and you will also do some exercise, but you cannot separately go and do something for yourself. Of course, we cannot live up to this kind of standard. I'm just telling you what was Srila Sridhar Maharaj's standard. And that's what he expected of those who stayed in our mat. So, it was very strict. But Gurudev, he made a very sweet comment that he said, although it was very strict, he never felt that. He never felt, oh, I'm living in so much austerity, or I have so much, I have so much that's being imposed upon me. He said, I never felt that. I felt that everything that came to us was the love of Guru Maharaj. It was his love. He was trying to guide us with his love. And so we want to try to follow all of the practices in that way, whether it's, chanting or association or deity worship or whatever it may be. We'll think, I'm in this struggling position, this struggling play. I'm in this low condition of life. Somehow I've come here, but so mercifully the Lord, the Shastra, the Sadhu, the scripture, they have given all of these guidelines to help me how to get from A to B, and it is all out of their affection. So I also want to follow with affection. That is important. So, that's some, general, discussion about love and surrender, how these things are intricately connected. And then, we can also continue with this topic. And what was the next thing I wanted to say? What surrender? There are a few things in my list here. There is another point. Oh, okay. And then then let's go a little more deep. That's it. Let's go a little more deeply into what is surrender, and what is the nature of surrender. Let's go more deeply into that. And the next thing I wanted to say was that surrender means that we are setting aside whatever knowledge, experience, prejudice we have collected, during the course of our long sojourn in this world. We're setting that aside, and we're putting our head, at the feet the Lord, Guru, Vaishnava, and we are receiving with our cupped palms. We're receiving their version of reality. We are acknowledging our limitation, our concoction. We're emptying that out, and with an empty vessel, we are receiving that higher view, the higher version. We're setting aside our own interpretation of reality, and we are receiving what's coming down, from a higher plane. And this, this is always the process. You're asking, what is the process of surrender? This is fundamentally what the process of surrender is. And you'll see this consistently throughout the scriptures and in genuine Vaishnava exchange. So Bhagavad Gita is a very clear example of that. And we see in the beginning, the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is surveying the battlefield and coming to Krishna, expressing his doubts, right? And he's mentioning many reasons why he doesn't want to engage in this battle, and he's then coming to Krishna with tears in his eyes, sets his bow and arrow aside and tells Krishna, I brokenhearted, I cannot, fight, and lists all of his reasons. But then after, venting to Krishna, he then concludes by telling Krishna, however, Krishna, please tell me what you think. And there's this famous line there at the beginning of chapter 2, Shishashteham Shadi Twamam Prapanam. Prapana means a surrendered soul. So he says, I am your prapana. I am your surrendered disciple. Shishyas, you please instruct me. So I've told you what I like, according to my experience in this world, according to my limited view on reality, I've presented what I think. Now I'm putting that aside and I'm ready to follow whatever you say, because I know that you have a higher vision of what's really happening and what's my real necessity. And so you please tell me and I will follow what you say. That's surrender. That's surrender. So that's, the process of surrender is illustrated, very clearly, very nicely in Bhagavad Gita. And then after that, that's when Bhagavad Gita really begins. That's when Krishna begins his instructions, from that point. Then going further into the nature of surrender, we can also express that the scriptures, they describe different aspects of surrender. And I see that Braja Mohini, I think she's just, she's put a link here to this, for those who aren't familiar, very valuable book, Apana Jivanamrita, which goes into discussion of these 6 limbs of surrender. And Didi, if you can also share a link to Sharanagati, that would be nice too, if you could share a link there. So yeah, that's going further into this subject. The scriptures describe these 6 different aspects of Sharanagati, and these are given in different orders. These 6 limbs. Prapana Jivanamrita, this literally means life nectar of the surrendered souls, nectar in the lives of the surrendered souls. Prapana Jivanamrita. There's a special kind of nectar that only the surrendered souls can experience. So that is the title of that book by Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And so Srila Sridhar Maharaj, in that text, he follows a this like the standard order that's presented in the scriptures. But interestingly, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he presents these 6 limbs of surrender in a different order. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj has discussed that, and I'm mentioning it because you specifically mentioned the process of surrender. And so Srila Sridhar Maharaj expressed appreciation for the way in which Bhaktivinoda Thakur laid out these 6 limbs, that there's a particular order there. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in the order that he presented these 6 limbs, he put humility first, doinya. He's put that as the first quality, as the first step, you could say, on one's path of surrender. Doinya, doinya, humility, atmanivedan, self-giving, goptriche varan, means to accept the Lord as one's guardian. Doinya, atmanivedan, goptrit, avashavakshibekrit, to have confidence in the Lord's protection. Avasharakshibhe Krishna Vishwasa Palan. And then to embrace what is favorable on the path of devotion and to reject what is unfavorable. Did I say all 6? Yeah. Humility, full self-surrender, embracing the Lord as one's guardian, confidence in the Lord's protection, and then accepting what is favorable, rejecting what is unfavorable. These are the 6 limbs that are described. So going back to the point that Srila Sridhar Maharaj has made, he appreciated how Bhaktivinoda Thakur deliberately, he selected humility as the first. If you look in his song collection, Sharanagati, he's put humility as the very first section. And so Srila Sridhar Maharaj discussed how this is the first necessity, on the path of surrender, in our life of devotion. Humility is the first necessity, because humility means that we feel that we are lacking in some way, that we are in need. We cannot, and he pointed out that we cannot approach shelter if we don't feel that we need it. First we have to feel that we need it. First we must feel that we are lacking in some way. Otherwise we cannot approach. It is the same with anything in life. If you go to approach any teacher, if you hope to gain anything from any teacher, from in any subject matter, cooking or mathematics or whatever it may be, you'll only be moved to seek guidance, to take shelter of a higher guide, if we feel that we are lacking, we are deficient in some way. We need to gain more, we need to learn more. So that has to be the first feeling that we have, that we are on the negative side, we are empty, we are in need. And then the next movement will naturally be Atmanivedan, to approach for shelter, to give ourselves, to submit ourselves, to a higher guide. And then Gokchiche Varan, to accept the Lord as our guardian. That Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and this is also told by Jiva Goswami, this is described as the central limb, the angi, as I recall, the phrase that Srila Sridhar Maharaj, angi and anga. Angi means like the root, and anga means like a limb or a branch. So this Jiva Goswami has stated this to be the central mood of surrender, to accept the Lord as one's guardian. This is the main aspect, and the others are supporting. They are supporting that. And it's I always find, when I consider that, I always find it very encouraging, that to have that mood, that you are my guardian, you are my Lord, you are my master, and I am your servant, I am your child, that is it. In one sense, it is very simple, Of course, in another sense, it is not so simple. It's not so simple to come to simplicity, actually. We can put it like that, It is not so easy to come to such simplicity, but it is actually simple, but to become simple is not so simple from our current position, Is that helpful, Nahush? Do you want to add anything to that?
It's very helpful. I don't know what else I can add. Those two references to those two books are really nice.
Yeah.
I know it's a continuous process that, and that's what I meant with the degrees. And it was explained nicely. So yeah, it's a continuous process and get more and more surrendered as we.
Surrender is really what it's all about, beginning, middle, and end. It's what it's all about. Srila Sridhar Maharshi, because sometimes Srila Sridhar Maharshi has made this point that, sometimes we may have this idea that surrender is a means to the end, right? That I will surrender and I will get such and such as a result. I will surrender and I will get prema, I will get divine love, But he said, actually, as much as you are surrendering, so much you already have, that is the wealth, and that ultimately is what Krishna prema is, what divine love is. That's what divine love is constituted of, the mood of surrender. It is the earnest desire to, insatiable desire to give oneself more and more and more. And he referenced one expression of Mahaprabhu, prema dana vina vyarta daridra jivan dasa kodi vetan mori. What is it? Dasa kodi vetan mori. The last bit, he's saying that deho prema dan dasa kodi. But saying that a life without prema, divine love, is very poor. Daridra is very poor. It is an impoverished life. To live without divine love is a life that is real poverty. So then he says, therefore, he's appealing to the Lord in the mood of a devotee. He's appealing to the Lord, saying, so therefore, please make me your servant and give me the salary of prema. And then Srila Sridhar Maharaj points out that what Mahaprabhu is actually saying is, make me your servant, and in exchange for me serving you, give me more capacity and more desire and more tendency to serve you. because that's essentially what prema is. It is that intense desire to give oneself. And then another thing I wanted to add also to this discussion is that surrender is what makes bhakti real. Because, there are some persons, who they consider themselves to be, followers of bhakti, but they ignore this point about Sharanagati. Because bhakti can be something very, pleasant and pleasurable and joyful. What I mean to say is that bhakti can be something that's more about our own, satisfaction, the kirtan. There are so many elements of the process of bhakti which are very pleasing, Kirtan, chanting, association with nice people, worshiping the beautiful deity, taking nice, delicious prasad, dressing and, very, cool, stylish outfits. And, there are many elements in the practices of bhakti, which are just, nice, and pleasing and fun or whatever, cool, and so what we see can happen or does happen or can happen is that it becomes all about that, that you're following all of those things, but that spirit, that inner spirit is lacking. That who am I doing this for? This is what distinguishes, this is what draws the line. Who am I doing this for? Is this an offering to my beloved, to my Lord? Is it an offering to him? Or is it for my own satisfaction, for my own senses, or for my own development, or whatever it may be? Srila Sridhar Maharaj has pointed out that even our hearing must be offered for Krishna's sake. He says, if we're listening to the class, then we have to think, who is the beneficiary of this? Why am I attending this? Why am I listening? Is it so I can increase my own knowledge? So I can improve myself in that way, or I can, I can have some ego that I know something more. Or is that also, for the satisfaction of my Lord? That, I'm hearing this because I want to serve my Lord better. I want to, develop my relationship with the Lord. I want to know how to please him more. I want to serve the devotees better, that kind of spirit. So this is the defining point, what makes it real bhakti, based on surrender, or, something superficial, that's pertaining to our superficial existence. So this is the key, this is the crux, this is the key point here. Who am I doing it for? And it always has to be connected with the central interest, with the higher interest. That's what makes it bhakti, real bhakti. But real bhakti must have this foundation of surrender. That is what makes it real. That is what makes it something purifying also. It's a supremely purifying movement. Die to live, in the fire of self-sacrifice, in the fire of self-giving. The spirit of sacrifice creates this kind of fire, and that fire will burn up all of our impurities, all of our anarthas. Whatever is undesirable within us, it will all be cleared, by this powerful fire of sacrifice. So we have others have joined us in these last minutes. Somya Sham and Vijayananda from Ireland, Dandavat, and Krishna Mohini Didi is also here from Spain, Dandavat. Nama Priya from Latvia.
Dandavat, Didi, Dandavat.
Dandavat. And also, is that Mahamantra? Was that Mahamantra speaking? Maybe. And here's Seva Rupa Didi, South Africa.
He's
sorry, what did you say, Didi?
He's working in the computer.
Okay.
From Mahamantra.
We love you, Mahamantra. He's our dear brother who's in Navadvip, our temple in Bengal for many years.
Mantra.
And also Bhakti Kori is with us, and Pradeep Sigaban in South Africa. And also an anonymous iPad. Very happy to be here with all of you.
I think the iPad is Rukmini.
Oh, Rukmini. Okay. Does anyone else want to add anything? I feel like I'm actually missing. I feel like somebody sent me a question that I'm forgetting, and I can't remember now if I've addressed it or not. Maybe Tungarasa, did you have a question, or maybe we already addressed your question.
Yes, it was last time.
Okay,
yes,
it was last
thank you
week.
very much.
Okay. And here's Ramananda Prabhu also joining us.
Dandavas Vishakha Didi, Dandavas everyone.
Dandavats, welcome Prabhu.
Thank you, Didi. So where are you now? You are still in Hungary, or you are?
I'm in Hungary, yes. I'm coming to California in a few weeks. So I'll
Good,
be there
good.
in your good company very soon.
Oh, good. We need somebody here. So,
well, we have just if no one has anything to suggest for last few moments here, we can remember, we've just been through this sannyas period of Mahaprabhu. We did have little discussion last week, but it is a very, there's so much actually that can be said about that. And we were just these last few days we were reading from Chaitanya Charitamrita, which describes some of the details around Mahaprabhu taking sannyas, and it is very charming, how we hear how Mahaprabhu, he was tricked by his devotees, because after he took sannyas, then he entered into this mood of separation and intense desire to dedicate himself to Krishna, and he quotes this verse that's spoken by one Brahmin called the Avanti Brahmin in Srimad Bhagavatam. Etam sahasaya paratmanishtam, saying that I will, very fervently, Mahaprabhu was chanting this verse, saying that I will cross over the whole of material existence, by dedicating myself to the service of Mukunda, the service of Krishna, And it's pointed out, by our gurus that this is the essence of what sannyas is actually. Sannyas does not mean just to, wear a particular dress, or follow a particular lifestyle, but the essence of it is to dedicate oneself, to Krishna. And as Gurudev said, anybody can take that kind of sannyas, whether you're following, whether you're wearing that cloth or not, that is really what sannyas means, exclusive, wholehearted dedication. So Mahaprabhu, after he takes sannyas, the order of renunciation, then he enters into this very intense mood and a trance, and he says he's going to Vrindavan. He wants to serve Krishna in Vrindavan, and so he goes on his way. But because he's in this kind of bewildered state, then he's not exactly clear about where he's going, and so the devotees take advantage of him because his devotees don't want him to go to Vrindavan. They want him to stay with them in Bengal. And so Nityananda Prabhu, he, heads up this this gang, and they trick Mahaprabhu so he can't make it to Vrindavan, and sometimes Nityananda, he would like guide Mahaprabhu, away from going to Vrindavan. At one time, Nityananda goes ahead and he tells some cowherd boys, if you see this sannyasi coming and he asks you, which way is the Jamuna River, point him in this way, point in this direction, so Nityananda tricks him in this way. And so then finally Mahaprabhu, he ends up at one bank of the Ganga, the Ganges, due to these tricks of Nityananda Prabhu. And then as a part of Nityananda's master plan, Advaita Charya comes along on a boat at that exact moment. He's prepared to collect Mahaprabhu, give him some dry clothes and so on, bring him to his home. And this is after 3 days, Mahaprabhu wandering in trance for 3 days. So what kind of state he was in, very disheveled. He's been fasting. So finally he ends up there at the banks of the Ganges, and he's been told that it's the Jamuna. So he sees the Ganges River and he thinks, oh, I've reached the Jamuna. And he begins taking that water on his head and he chanting verses in glorification of the Jamuna, when it's actually the Ganga. And then Advaita Charya comes up on his boat, and Mahaprabhu is very surprised. He says, oh, Advaita, what are you doing here in Vrindavan? It's such a surprise to see you. I wouldn't have expected you would also be in Vrindavan. How nice to see you here. And then Advaita says, oh no, we are in Navadvip. But actually it is because, remember, these holy rivers, they all conjoin in Prayag, and so the Ganga, the Jamuna, and the Saraswati, they merge at this place. So it is said that one bank, I think it's the western bank of the Ganga, it can be considered non-different from the Jamuna. And so Advaita says, actually, you've come to this side of the Ganga, which is considered to be the Jamuna. So actually Nityananda, hasn't told any lie, But anyway, please come with me. Your clothes are falling apart. You haven't eaten anything. Please come to my home and I'll take care of you there. And he says, don't worry, I haven't prepared anything too fancy, just a few very simple, boiled vegetables and rice. So he brings Mahaprabhu on his boat. And of course, it was a total lie. And there's this grand feast with so many different opulent preparations that have been prepared. And there's a very wonderful description of that in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And so then it's about 12 days or so. Mahaprabhu, they have like a 12-day festival there at the home of Advaita Acharya. And it was a very significant meeting because, this is kind of like marking this transition. Mahaprabhu's leaving behind his life in Navadvip, as a householder, as a great Sanskrit scholar, Nimai Pandit, as the loving, resident of Nadia. He's leaving that whole persona behind, and he's entering into another world, this world of, the order of renunciation, where he has to leave his family behind, leave all comforts behind, his mother, his wife, his students. So this was a very special occasion where, these persons could come, everyone with the exception of his wife, Vishnu Priya Devi, but everyone else, his mother, his associates, they could all come and meet him there. It was their kind of their last chance before he began his new life. So it was a very special meeting. And so on that occasion also, Mahaprabhu requested his mother, very, with affection and mercy in his heart, he requested his mother to choose where he would stay. And so it was Shachi Devi, Mahaprabhu's mother, who selected Puri, because Puri was not so far away. Orissa is next to Bengal, so it was not so far away, and it's a common pilgrimage route. So there were often pilgrims going back and forth between Navadvip and Puri, and so it would be easy for her to get news of how her beloved son is doing. And so she chose Puri, and Mahaprabhu, acceded to her wishes. And then this second phase in Mahaprabhu's life, his Leela in this world began, from that point. And there's also description of how on his way, then Mahaprabhu finally departs for Puri with a small group, and then on his way, he has an altercation with Nityananda, because Nityananda breaks his danda, his sannyas danda rod. Nityananda breaks it one day while Mahaprabhu goes to bathe. Nityananda, he doesn't like that Mahaprabhu is carrying this around, and so he breaks it, and then Mahaprabhu becomes very upset, and he tells Nityananda, I cannot travel with you anymore. Either you go ahead without me and I'll come after, or I go ahead and you come after me later, but we're not traveling alone. So they decide, Mahaprabhu will go ahead, and then the pastime with Sarvabhauma takes place. Many wonderful descriptions there in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Srila Sridhar Maharaj, there's so much that Srila Sridhar Maharaj has commented about this pastime of Mahaprabhu taking sannyas, and last week we said something. Vrinda Devi was there and she spoke very nicely, and one other point that I was remembering is as Vrinda said, it's like the coldest time of year, early January. It's the coldest time of year in India, and yet Mahaprabhu, he swims across this river, going from Navadvip to Katwa, with this urgency to take sannyas. So in the middle of the night, the coldest time of year, swimming across the river. This is no light thing. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he made one very sweet comment about that, and he said that Mahaprabhu did not feel the cold, and he said because on one side he was heated by in the mood of a devotee, love for Krishna, was heated by this love for Krishna. And then he said on the other side, he was heated by this desire he had to save the souls of this world. His sannyas was for that purpose, on one level, to help the souls of this world. That we are all wandering like lost souls in this world, and for our benefit, Mahaprabhu showed that example, made that sacrifice, of leaving everything behind, for the higher cause. So he said, because he was heated, he was so heated on both sides like this, he did not feel any of the cold, but for the residents of Navadvip, and for us it is a happy thing, but for the residents of Navadvip it is most heartbreaking. There's one poem of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and again, I think we were mentioning this last week too, but it's such a privilege for us that we can like get a peep into the hearts of these, like the inner circle, what's their feeling, what's their mood. And so Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, they've expressed that, like what is the feeling of the inner circle of Mahaprabhu. And so there's one poem, we mentioned something last week, some expressions of Bhakti Vinod Thakur, and there's also one poem, it's not so well known, but it's written by Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and the refrain of every verse, it's a composition of some verses, and the refrain, Sachir Nimai Korede Sanyas. It's very poignant, very touching to the heart. It's Sachir Nimai Korede Sanyas, means Sachi's Nimai has taken sannyas. And it's describing the heartbreak, that the residents of Navadvip experienced when they woke up that morning and found their beloved Nimai had disappeared in the night, and would never again be the same, could never come back to them as their own boy, a boy of their own village. So it's describing this like heartbreak and desolation that they felt. And then this refrain is particularly heartrending. Shachi's Nimai has taken sannyas. It's like it's like paradoxical. Like he's the son of Shachi. He's somebody's boy. You may see him as this very, grand, sannyasi, this very renounced, very learned scholar, monk. But we know him as the boy of Mother Shachi. He's our boy. He's a child of our village. He's our own boy. He's taken sannyas. It's very, very, very heartrending sentiment. And there's a discussion in Golden Volcano of Divine Love where Srila Sridhar Maharaj enters into these topics, and one of the things that he points out is how the spirit of separation, it is so crucial in one's spiritual cultivation, because the pain of separation, it cuts more deeply to the heart, more than union, so Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he's expressed, that separation, vipralamba, is the highest realization, So that, that sentiment, it is not some auxiliary, aspect of his Leela, but it is very crucial for the development of his Leela and for the development of the, heart sentiment of the devotees of Mahaprabhu, that feeling of separation. So, we are on the outskirts, we don't have such high sentiments ourselves, but we are reflecting on these things and appreciating the ideal, that our gurus have shown to us. Yeah. Ananga Krishna Prabhu has also joined us from Tijuana. Welcome. Anyone want to, we're just about at the end here. Does anyone want to add anything? Any final thoughts? Or should we close there?
Vishakha, can I ask something?
Yeah, sure.
Like Gurudev told many times that under the guidance of Vaishnava, but which one? Who you know? Some devotees are telling me I should take sannyas. I'm not even qualified. I cannot follow anything. I don't say anything. Some few years ago, also somebody told me. I just ignore it. I know Gurudev will let me know when I. So who should we follow? So Acharya Maharaj was different. So I try to follow everybody, but it's just like in one lecture, Srila Gurudev said, sheep leading sheep. So if you pull the front sheep, then everybody will go back down or go with the. So I don't know. I pray to Guru Maharaj. I'm alone. I'm just staying here and see. I try to preach like Mahaprabhu said, whoever you see, you preach. And I listen to Param Guru Maharaj and just, I don't know, try to stay afloat. But it's been crazy last few years. Yeah.
Well, I think you're already following the perfect life. You have so much wealth from Gurudev. You're continuing very steadily with your practicing, your association. You're always trying to serve at the ashram there, maintaining your connection with the devotees. No, you're already doing everything. You just have to continue. And as to who we will follow, it depends on our faith, actually. No, you have the connection with Srila Govinda Maharaj, and you're continuing with that. And you're also, I know you're also hearing from other Vaishnavas, and you're taking association from the senior Vaishnavas. So that is all perfect. We may not find the perfect, one person to follow at the current time. We may not find that, but we can collect what we can from others, and we also continue with what we have in our heart. Avadut Maharaj asked Gurudev once before he left, after you, who should I follow? Who can I trust? Something like that. And Gurudev said, you can believe everyone, you can trust everyone, you can hear from everyone, follow everyone, but with some discrimination also. So we can collect something good from everyone. We may not have that perfect 100% perfect guide, but every Vaishnava has some quality. And in particular, Gurudev has indicated, who has some, more reliable position. Then we will give more attention to those persons. Like there in California, you have Srila Janardhan Maharaj, so like that, those persons we will give some special honor and attention to, But you also have your own relationship with Gurudev in your heart, and that's continuing, and nothing can take that away from you. So all is not lost.
Devotees were telling me to come India. Sometimes I think I go to, but I know Gurudev want me here. Yeah. I have friends everywhere. Yeah. It's Mahaprabhu's mercy, Gurudev, and some devotees were telling, come to India. I don't know. Sometimes I think I just go India. Here, I feel wasted so much time. We could have done so much more. But that's what Gurudev came. Srila Prabhupada also came to Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Parine. That was Srila Prabhupada's mission. He wanted to take the impersonalism here in West. And Gurudev said also they are mountain of ego. I feel Gurudev smashing their ego. It's become a little better.
Well, we also have a mountain of ego within ourselves. We have to take care of that too. Anyway, I think we'll end here. But very nice to see you, Ramananda Prabhu, and look forward to seeing you next time. Dandavat pranams to all the assembled Vaishnavas, all glories to our divine guardians. Hey.